and welcome to Escaping Kasterborous, the podcast where we rewatch, reminisce, and review everything Doctor Who from 2005 to present. My name is Rich, and I am joined by the one person who would absolutely be tempted into a dodgy-looking lorry by food. It's Amy. Put the pieces together. If you were out in the cold, starving, hungry, and some dude came up and said there's a buffet in the back of his truck, what would you do? A, bang the dude who brought you the buffet.
Why'd you put me across like I'm a whore? That's
because you do anything for a buffet. B, would you go into the truck and eat the buffet? Or C, would you eat what's his name again? Andrew Hayden Smith, as he's lurking around behind you.
Do I get the option of being sensible enough to question why the hell is a random dude offering me food in the back of a lorry? Because I feel like I would pick that one, even if it is a buffet. I only trust buffets from people you know, kids.
Don't talk to strangers and don't accept buffets from them. So
unless you're at a wedding, in which case, fine.
It appears to be that the white van driving around our area with free buffet spray painted on the side, rather than free ice cream or free candy. Sorry, that's the phrase. The free buffet van has still not captured Amy. And yet you haven't watched Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and know not to fall for that kind of thing.
They say the best things in life are free, but I know a good buffet comes at a price. So...
Words to live by, listeners. The best things in life are free, except for a buffet. What was it again?
A good buffet comes at a price.
That's... to go alongside the... lunch dinner egg t-shirt that I will one day get bored and design and probably release. There will be a middle-aged white woman home decor bit,
a wall
sticker. the bit of wood with some paint with some sign writing on it that says
the best things in life are free, except a good buffet comes at a price.
The thing is, both you and your mother would have that in your house.
Oh, 100%. I might just make it for Mum and put it on a bloody print or something so she can stick it on the wall.
It'd be such a weird present, just like, happy birthday, Mum, and she's like, what? Where is this from?
Laugh.
Oh, it's from our podcast. Do you not listen to our podcast, Amy's mum?
Of course she doesn't.
That's the joke, Amy.
She wouldn't understand it.
Bless her. Maybe we should sit her down. Maybe we should get her, we should catch her up on Doctor Who up to this point and then get her on the podcast as a guest.
You would not be able
So
to
Amy's
mum,
what did you think of the Idiot's Lantern next week?
For that long. Also,
but
she
welcome.
Didn't have a bloody clue what was going on.
No, I know. Anyway, enough about Amy's mother.
Who's he?
This isn't Xbox Live.
What?
That's a very, very niche joke. Welcome back to Escaping Kasterborous. Welcome to the first return to normality, even though we've spent the opening of this podcast talking about Amy's mother and a buffet. So, standard procedure, really. Welcome to Rise of the Cybermen and Age of Steel. Because we said in episode 0 of this podcast, of this reboot, that two-parters were going to be put together because we figured during season 1, or the initial run, I should say, of this podcast, we decided that doing two-parters as separate episodes was a bit useless because we'd do all the character development, all the establishment in the first episode, and then not have much to talk about regarding the second. So we figured we might as well put them both together and just sort of go from there.
So are we going to call this one episode 1, or are we going to call this one episode... What episode of series 2? Well, are we on 6? 5?
When on anchor.fm, anchor.fm/Kasterpod, you can set it to have like a season number and an episode. And when we were on Acast with What Culture, I could do that and it would match up to the series we're on. And it's like, I could have started this at series 2, episode, 5? Episode, But then you can't have it say series 2, episode 5 and 6. Because technically it is. So basically, we're just going to do our own continuity of episodic numberinos.
Structuring.
Technical term. So this is basically, because internally we're just going to do episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So this is basically episode 1 of the podcast. Yes. It's EK2, Escaping Kasterborous 2, because it's the reboot. Episode 1. Last week was episode 0. Welcome. welcome, welcome. It has been so long since we've done a proper episode review, I don't even know where to start. Basically,
No, me either.
the Doctor, Rose and Mickey are aboard the TARDIS having a fly about, and the Doctor and Rose are laughing about stuff, and Mickey the idiot stood there holding a button down he didn't need to hold down for 29 minutes longer than he had to.
Poor Mickey.
I know.
That's got to hurt after half an hour. Can you imagine pushing a button down for half an hour?
Depends how much activation force a button needs on the TARDIS. Is it a Cherry MX Red or is it a Cherry MX Black?
I don't know if you could hear this, listeners, but I just rolled my eyes.
You can hear them going... Because it's so sore and dry in Amy's eyelids because she rolls her eyes like every single time I open my goddamn mouth.
Basically.
You love me, though.
I do, but... Oh, God, okay, let's not talk about the activation of a button. Let's carry on.
So, yeah, Mickey's being left kind of out of it. He's very much this third wheel, and we established that in Girl in the Fireplace. Because obviously, being the first story that had Mickey on board the TARDIS properly with Rose and the Doctor, not much happens to them, and that's kind of that. Whereas this one, it also doesn't explore much about the relationship between Rose and Mickey, does it?
No, I sort of forgot that this one leads on from Girl in the Fireplace because we've had such a gap. I was like, wait, what was the last thing we watched? Yeah, Girl in the Fireplace. No, it kind of puts it into, like, they do quite a tight job of explaining, like, the quote-unquote relationship between, like, the dynamic. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. It does quite a tight job of explaining the dynamic between the three of them that obviously has developed over sort of the off-screen gap that you get with this era of Who. That's very sort of common of like, oh, they've been off screen for a while, which means that they've done a bunch of stuff in that time. It does a very tight job of explaining that dynamic that has developed between the three of them in this off-screen time, because obviously you've got like Rose and the Doctor being all pally-wally and being kind of like, oh, do you remember this? It was so funny. Oh my God, do you remember that? Lol. And then Mickey's like the third wheel who's really trying to get involved by being like, oh, what happened? What was that? And they're like, oh, it's nothing. It's just nothing. Don't worry about it. And Mickey's just there like, yeah, great, thanks.
Even after, as you say, after all of these adventures that they've supposedly had, as I said, in terms of televised stuff, we've only had the one thing that they've done together so far. He still is the tin dog, bless him.
He is, really.
He's just left.
You'd think it would have kind of sort of... Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? You'd think they'd have kind of tried to rectify that a little bit between the three of them, but I don't think the Doctor and Rose do it on purpose, but I think it was very difficult for Rose to detach herself from that idealistic kind of thing of like, yay, me and the Doctor on adventures. And like Mickey's obviously been kind of put by the wayside, which you see come a lot more in this episode, become much more apparent.
We don't really know exactly how long the Doctor and Rose have been together at this point. So it's like, yeah, this literal just third wheel waltzes in. So
poor lad.
Or, well, he's still can a wheel be a lad?
A wheel?
I said third wheel and you said lad.
Oh,
what
yeah,
do you think
no,
I
sorry.
said?
No, I don't know. When you said third wheel be a lad, I was really confused. I was like, is this a reference to him being a tin dog, like that he's on wheels or something? My brain got really confused.
K9 has only 3 wheels, apparently. I'm pretty certain he has 4. Or maybe even 6.
Now you've just confused me anymore. The point is, is that he's come into this situation, he's trying to be involved, he's very much sadly not involved, and I think a lot of his actions are just because we said, didn't we, while watching the episode, or I said, you said kind of thing, that like when obviously Rose kind of buggers off, does her own thing, goes and sits with her phone on a bench, and Mickey goes out and is like, oh, wait, you say we've got 24 hours? Oh, I've got some stuff to do.
Yeah, that's kind of the next big thing, I think, before we get too carried away with talking about the Cybermen and John Lumick, is that following the fact that the Doctor works out that there's a bit of light left in the TARDIS, they can reboot her, she'll be fine, they can get him out of there. And obviously Rose
conveniently
discovers
has
that
24 hours.
yeah, Rose discovers that Pete, her dad, is still alive because parallel world. We say they landed in a parallel world. The TARDIS dies. Blah blah blah. You all know this. You've watched the episode. And they have 24 hours to go do stuff. And this is the point where, and going back to it, and obviously now that we're watching it again and being a bit more analytical about the whole thing, I didn't ever seem to realise. At first, I was much more sort of understanding of why Rose wants to go and chase her dad, why Mickey realises. Obviously, Mickey sees this potential. The fact that Rose's dad is still alive, maybe his nan is still alive, which is, I'm assuming, like, I would completely understand why he goes off by himself and goes beeline straight to his nan to see whether she's alive as well. But when there's the scene of the Doctor looking back at both of them and shouting, like, get back here, don't go away, here. I never realised just how much of a dick move that is from Rose and Mickey.
I personally think it's a bit more of a dick move from Rose. Because, like I said to you when we were sat downstairs, it kind of feels like Mickey has taken this attitude that he gets at the beginning of the episode of the Doctor being all, oh, you could have released that button 29 minutes ago, and then not involving him in the conversation. It's kind of like he's already discovering that this is not where he should be. Like, he shouldn't be travelling with, or not that he shouldn't be, but like he doesn't want to, and it's not his place. So he's kind of gone, you know what, we've got 24 hours. We're in a parallel world. I just want to see if my nan's alive because she's a home comfort and I miss her. And I can totally understand why he wants to in that instance, because he doesn't intend to get into any trouble. Nobody ever bloody does. But it's more Rose, like you said to me, Rose knows the consequences of Father's Day. And I know that this is a bit different because this isn't time travel per se. It's the same day. It's just a parallel world. But
she feels like she's got more flexibility.
But she should know that there are consequences from these things. I mean, how many times did the Doctor have to say throughout the entire episode, it's not your mum, it's not your dad, they're not your parents. And she still is like, oh, I just want to see him. It's like, Rose, you're being such... I can understand the emotional upheaval of losing
I was going to say,
dad.
like, I don't think we personally couldn't understand... I mean, I'd say it that way. In terms of losing your father specifically, but like in terms of losing somebody and getting the chance to see them again, of course you're going to seize that opportunity. Yeah. But it's like with all that Rose has been through, Father's Day being the very apt one to reference, she should know better. As hard as it is, she should know better.
And she's overcome with all this kind of teenage emotion because you forget how young she is. I mean, is she still 19 in this or is she 20?
She's probably 20. I mean, because she mentioned about, because when the Doctor, when Mickey goes off and Rose fills in the Doctor about why he's disappeared and who he's gone to find, she says, oh, you know, his nan died 5 years ago. I was still in school. So she'd have been like 15.
And I was just like, geez, what? Like,
it's like, what? If that's I looked so as good young. As Rose Tyler did at 19...
I mean, you would be a woman, so that would be.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
If I could look like Billy Piper, I'm game.
Well, I mean, I'd rather you look like David Tennant, but that's another matter.
And here comes the simping. Should we just get David Tennant running in a skin tight tux and Converse out the way first?
Please
pause your podcast here and pleasure yourself.
Not
we'll
what?
Be back
No,
in,
don't
we'll be
do
back
that.
In a few pumps.
I mean, do that if you really want to. Just don't tell us you've done it. I don't want to know.
Please don't tweet us at Kasterpod with "I just beat my dick to your podcast."
Please, no, that's vile. Anyway, the point is that Rose is still quite young, and I know that obviously we look at, and you know, we're both 26, and I feel like for our age we are quite mature. Yes. I don't know how mature.
Says the guy who just implied about beating your dick over a podcast.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're mature in different ways, but that's not the point. I mean, emotionally mature, okay. But so looking at Rose, it's kind of difficult to think, like, at 20 years old, how would we have probably reacted to that and think, like, would it be the same? Would it be a bit different? Because, I mean, I feel like I'd have a slightly more level head. However, I've never been in that situation and I never will be. So it's hard to say what you would do, I suppose.
I would say if this were me 7 years ago, because I lost my nan 7 years ago. And if I were like a year later than that when I turned like 20. In the same way Rose is apparently 20 odd at this point. If I had the opportunity to see her again, I would take it. So it's like, we've almost like talked ourselves into a bit of a corner here, like the idea of, we think she's being naive and she should know better, but also you can understand,
you can justify it, yeah. And so this is what I'm saying. This is why we have these conversations, because from one side of the coin, you might think, oh my God, she really should know to listen to the doctor. Like, she's been through this before. But on the other side of the coin, you can be a little bit like, yeah, but then again, what would any of us have done in that situation?
Yeah.
And so I don't particularly think that, yes, it comes across like they're being a little bit selfish.
They should have listened to the doctor. But...
Yes, they should have done. But Mickey's got his reasons. Rose has got her reasons. But I think Mickey is ever so slightly more justified in his reasonings for Wander Off, because he knows that he's kind of not involved in this dynamic. And so therefore, what harm is it going to do if he wanders off for 24 hours? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a bit of a back and forth, really, with who should have done what. But I definitely feel like it's a difficult situation, and you never really know sort of who to judge or what to judge. But you made a good point, is that obviously, so like Mickey runs off, and then we get straight to sort of, well, I don't we get straight to, there's a cutaway to another scene, but like when the Doctor and Rose sort of go off, there's nothing really that leads you to be suspicious of anything.
Yeah, so, let's segue over to the Cybers Industries and the late, great Roger Lloyd Pack playing
R.I.P.
the very, very eerie John Lumick. And to sort of get the whole conversation about the Cybermen and how they were reintroduced into New Who kind of out the way, we did actually get a question from Adam over on Twitter asking about what we thought of the way that the Cybermen were reintroduced in the modern series and how it compared to the way that they did it for the Daleks in Dalek. Because in case you maybe weren't paying as much attention in this, or you don't really know how it used to be, because the Doctor very, very briefly brushes over it. The Cybermen came from Mondas in the original canon. They are still made to be like, it's a brain of I think, because Mondas is a parallel to a parallel planet to Earth in the solar system.
Right.
It's like it's somehow habitable, and I think it looks like an inverted Earth. It's very, the Cybermen are from the 60s. It's very, very, on the nose. And they do their whole upgrading thing, and then they spread across the galaxy that way. Whereas obviously in this continuity, in this parallel Earth, they start on Earth from
a scientist.
Yeah, from John Lumick,
a businessman,
and Cybers Industries. I guess kind of both. Who's dying, wants to find a way to prolong himself, and ends up thinking, this is great for everyone, let's do it for everyone. So it's a really... I personally love how they brought the Cybermen back, but didn't, as Adam says on Twitter, doesn't drop all the lore of the history of it on them. Like, the Dalek lore and what... obviously there's a lot of it based on the fact that Daleks were so popular back in the old series, so they just kept bringing them back. I'm not going to complain. But... they didn't drop all that on you in Dalek, and they don't drop that all on you in this two-parter either, because they are literally a new breed.
I think the thing also as well with the way that they reintroduced the Daleks in Dalek was Russell T Davies had a different job to do, or a different story to tell, because obviously Russell T Davies was the one who invented the concept of the Time War.
Yes.
And it happened in between... like the series ending in 1989? Yeah, I did get that right. Between the series ending in 1989 and starting up again in 2005, he created this kind of like, oh look, this happened while we were off air, and so he had a very different story to tell from that perspective. So I think that was probably why he didn't drop all that kind of like bombshelly lore straight onto you. But it also isn't necessary. Like, I think from this kind of retelling, or like in new introductory standpoint of where you're at in this series and in the Doctor Who kind of canon in general, you don't need to know who the Cybermen have been to know who they are in this instance, like, because it all gets explained, but it doesn't get spoon-fed to you. It doesn't get what's the word I'm looking for? Exposition. It doesn't get like is there a thingy for that? Exposized? Like, I can't say, like you know what I mean, but like they don't spoon feed it to you in the way of like, oh my god, who are these people, oh my god, like it's all explained within the canon of the show and very well done and very well written, as is Russell T Davies. It's genius. But
it's not written by Russell T Davies, this one though.
Is it not?
No.
Who is it?
Tom McRae.
Who?
Tom McRae.
Tom McRae. Okay,
Tom McRae.
Tom McRae did a very good job.
He did.
So basically, I think the introduction of the Cybermen in this in this timeline was very well done, because it brings it back for people who watched Classic Who and who enjoyed Classic Who, but it also introduces it for people like us who would have been sort of 11 at the time, who'd never heard of the Cybermen, and I think it does it very well. I think you can't really compare the introduction of the Cybermen to the introduction of the Daleks, because they're two completely different.
Yeah, one is, as I said, one is a continuation of a continuity, and the other is a reboot of it. But obviously, as time goes on, the Cybermen obviously stay persistent throughout the course of Doctor Who in the reboot, because I mean they were in the most recent series. They wrapped up the most recent series of the show. But at some point in time, I need to make sure I point out exactly when that is. They just sort of drop back in the Mondasian our universe Cybermen, and it goes from there, because the Cyberswans, spoilers, do come back, but they're not the ones that continue through the course of the series. At some point, basically there's a point when the C on their chest that just disappears, and then you know that you've got the sort of, I don't want to say
just say the Mondasian,
the Earth 616 sort of stuff. Like, that's the original. Like, they just sort of get dropped back in. The whole idea of it being like, but they're the same design, they're just missing the C. It's like, whatever, that's TV.
See, I honestly think it would have been better, because I understand obviously them doing it from like a continuity. God, I can't say that word.
Neither of us can say it.
Continuity perspective of removing the C, because otherwise people would be like, hang on a minute, why is the Cybers Industries logo still on their chest? But then at the same time, I think it would have been cool to almost do like a little bit of a thing, because obviously in this parallel world, they were like, oh, it's all over the world, like we've got Cybermen everywhere. So like, what happens if one of their liberations of a country went wrong and the Cybermen took off into space and then somehow found their way through a crack in time and ended up in our universe? And then it could have been like, oh, look, the Cybermen from Cybers Industries have leaked through. Like, that feel would have been more of a, like, I get obviously the Mondasian Cybermen are our universe and all that kind of stuff, but like that would have been a kind of like a cool throwback. Maybe if you just had one or two that had a C still on them and the rest didn't, or
do the sort of the broken remnants of the Dalek Empire from the Time War.
Yeah,
and they just sort of play up on that. I think it would have been one of those things where I guess they couldn't have really continued to drag it along. The Daleks they can kind of get away with, but I think because it's as much as obviously it was as you say, a global operation for Cybers Industries, there it's quite sort of enclosed. It's not a very wide-reaching establishment for this breed of Cybermen. But yeah, I love the way that they get reintroduced, and I do love the design of these Cybermen. It's very 2006.
Oh, I love it. Like, you look at them and I just think, oh god, this was the kind of the era for the Cybermen, wasn't it?
I mean, we very much stand by that we are big RTD stands, so we're gonna love a lot of this era.
But I'm sure Russell T Davies probably didn't have a full hand in designing these current Cybermen. That was probably a costume designer or somebody like that.
Yeah, there'd be production design. He would have had a bit more of a say, because obviously being the showrunner, he would have written the series arc, and he would have said, "Hey, we brought back the Daleks in series 1." Because apart from I'm going to sound really dumb here, and I'm going to miss something, but I'm pretty certain apart from the Autons, the Daleks are the only returning villain in series 1.
Maybe.
I'm just going to very quickly run through it all in my head. I'm pretty certain that's the case.
Sure.
Because they try not to dump it all on you, like, really quickly, as said. Hence why we've got Cybermen in Series 2. Mm-hmm. And another one in Series 3. Yeah, we'll get to that. But just very quickly on a little segue, Tom McRae, I knew that I kind of recognised the name.
Yeah.
Because he also wrote The Girl That Waited in series 5 or 6. I think it's 6.
It's a good episode.
It is a good episode. But the other reason why I recognise his name is because he's also the book writer and the lyricist of Everybody's Talking About Jamie.
Oh.
That is amazing.
Cool.
That's very,
In
very
case you
cool.
didn't know this about us, we're also massive musical theatre nerds.
We are big musical theatre nerds. And one of my friends was in Everybody's Talking About Jamie on the
So
West
if you
End.
have any
And
crossover
yes,
with us on that front, please feel free to tweet
us
us
about musicals.
Tweet us about Dear Evan Hansen.
Speaking about stage stuff, we were going to go and see Time Fracture, the immersive theatre experience, and they've got like recorded cameos from loads of Doctors. They've got again. We will talk about Noel Clarke in a bit. But they've got John Barrowman in it as well, and it's like okay, fun. And they showed some pictures of some of the immersive sets, and it did look really cool. But because of the pandemic and it getting delayed, and the actual communication they had, because we were going to go see it in like late February.
It was February, yeah.
And then it got to late February, and there was nothing said. Like obviously, we never planned to go to London because obviously the UK went back into lockdown from just before Christmas all the way through to like basically now.
I mean, we're still technically in some form of lockdown.
Technically, yeah. And we might be for longer, but anyway. Yay. We were going to go to that, but eventually it got cancelled.
Yeah.
Our tickets got cancelled, and we didn't really... It's bad, because it's like we didn't really seem all that fussed to rebook it, probably because we didn't want to have to book another thing and wait.
Well, it's not so much that we didn't rebook it, it's that your mum bought us the tickets for Christmas.
Yeah, there was a gift.
So it was kind of that, like, thing of... Well, I mean, we will happily go and see it. However, the new performances were coming out. Was it May that they were coming out? It was like now, wasn't it? I think
it is soon. Yeah, it might be from very soon.
It was kind of like, will we actually want to go and see a show in May, or is it still feeling a little
Shifty
bit
Eyes is going to see a show
we
next
basically
week.
We haven't unfortunately rebooked it. Which was a shame because I would really like to see it, but you never know how long it's going to go on for.
Well, especially with all the other stuff going on in regards to the pandemic, it could be.
I meant you never know how long the show's going to run for.
It's not going to be that long, I wouldn't say, but you know.
But we'll see. We'll see if we can get tickets. But
admittedly, it's because it's part of the whole Time Lord Victorious canon. I've not actually kept up with it as much as I hoped.
Oh yeah, but that doesn't mean that you have to keep up with the full canon.
Oh no, but I read the first book, and then.
Oh yeah.
I haven't read the second one. I pre-ordered to get the second, the Night, the Fall, and the Dead, or whatever it's called, and I still haven't read it.
I'm not sure I could read it because the grammar is they're not questionable.
They're not super well written, but it was fun because what was the first one? No, the Night, the Fall, and the Dead was the first one. It's like All Flesh Is Grass is the second one. The titles are weird.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we've very much tangented, and we're already halfway through this podcast.
Theatre, let's do it.
Anyway, so where did we get to?
We talked about how they reintroduced the Cybermen.
Mysteries, yeah.
Roger Lloyd Pack, fantastic, just
John Lubick.
Eerie, creepy, like very as Pete Tyler puts it, very sharp, and he is like he knows what he's doing. He's mad, and he really delivers that sort of unhingedness. It's amazing how being confined to the wheelchair, which was not only the fact that John Lubick was confined to a wheelchair, but Roger Lloyd Pack also broke his leg just before filming.
Oh, did he?
So
that was convenient.
Convenient.
Maybe that's why he's in the chair at the end. I feel like he's in the chair at the end because he's like the all controller and he needs to be plugged.
I mean, that's not actually Roger Lloyd Pack in the costume.
No, I know. I'm aware. I'm joking. Anyway, the point is.
What was I going
to say? I was going to say, actually, you say he's obviously mad and unhinged a little bit. And yeah, he probably is.
He is.
However, I sort of see it as a bit of like... What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not sure if there's a word for this, but somebody who is so kind of vastly intelligent that they like sort of believe themselves.
They get
to
like a god complex.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. So maybe, he is a little bit unhinged and whatever, but he is also very, very clever. I mean, the fact that
absolutely.
he's been able to even do all this to start with his little football manager buddy, who I can't remember the name of, but
Mr. Crane. You keep referring to as like some kind of football. He does
manager.
have a very sort of football-y voice,
I feel like he... Yeah, I feel like he looks like a football manager, or like he's just got that look. And maybe it's the London accent, but for some reason I was just kind of like, I'm just going to call him football manager because I can't remember his name. So every time we were talking about him during the episode, Rich was like, "Oh, John Lumick's pal," and I went, "Oh, the football manager," and he was like, "Yeah, him."
He was also in because he's called Colin Spall. He was also in Revelation of the Daleks, which, fun fact, Rise of the Cybermen Age of Steel was directed by Graham Harper, who is the only director to have crossed the boundary between the classic series and the new series, because he directed two serials back in the 80s, one being The Caves of Androzani, which was Peter Davison's swan song, and also Revelation of the Daleks, which was Colin Baker's one Dalek episode with the introduction of the Imperial Daleks and Davros in a jar. And he plays the guy who plays Mr. Crane is one of the guys who works at Tranquil Repose, which you will not understand, Amy, because you've seen Revelation.
Not a clue.
He's not a major character, but it's him, and it's like, that's quite cool. I do love it when they have classic actors come back to do other things, because there's been a handful since at this point. There's been a couple. Obviously, Sarah Jane Smith being a very big one, being
and
the
Bernard
first
Cribbins,
big
obviously.
one. Bernard Cribbins wasn't really in Classic Who. He was in the movie.
No, he was in the movie, but he was still in some form of Doctor Who back in the day. By the way,
go and watch the Peter Cushing movies. They are wonderful. I love them to pieces. But yeah, that's a cheeky little segue.
Yeah, so the football manager.
We go back to the football manager. I was going to continue with the plot.
Okay, continue.
So, because I realised we were like halfway through this episode, we've barely
got like 10 minutes into it.
Yeah, I know. So Mickey goes off, sees his gran, and I think he makes his decision at that point. You can see it in his eyes, you can hear it in his voice. He realises this is going to be.
If I don't find something better first.
Yeah, this is going to be. This is for me because Rose isn't there for me anymore, and we'd already established that basically in Boomtown. The fact that he was seeing Shireen or whatever it is, whatever her name was.
Oh, I can't remember.
Something like that. Like, he's already seeing somebody else. And the idea that Mickey kind of goes with them, it almost feels like, is he trying to reconnect with Rose? Is he trying to steal her back away from the Doctor? Is he trying to find something better? Does he have a death wish, to put a really dark spin on it? Like, I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think maybe he's just clinging on to what's left, and he thinks maybe if he can go along with them on the adventure, that maybe he won't be left behind so much, and maybe she'll see him as like actually useful, and maybe she'll rekindle something with him. But obviously it's in vain, we know that now, but I think you can't really take away from that. Like, there's something to be said from his kind of like, but also he's been stuck on bloody Earth for ages while she's been off with him. He hears all these stories,
and it's like Jackie's not really capable to go on these trips with them, whereas Mickey definitely is, and he somewhat proves his worth in Gun in the Fireplace, but he very much proves it here because his twin, because obviously Rose discovers that there is no Rose Tyler on this Earth. She's a dog, which the Doctor finds hilarious, which is also hilarious.
That was so funny when he's like kind of goes and he's like, sorry, not funny.
And Mickey has Ricky, his actual alter ego. There's not many there's not many people who see themselves in this, but it's like literally Mickey's the only person who could out of the three who are there. So shut up, Rich.
But the one thing I find, one thing I do want to comment on in regards to the Mickey and Ricky thing, the CGI of them two in the same place is actually not horrible.
It's not bad. That's actually that is something that we can quickly touch upon in terms of its production value. Obviously, being the Cybermen, they kind of, in the same way that they would have done for the Daleks, if they had been a season 2 reintroduction. Whereas I don't think they'd have managed that in series 1. I think if people have Doctor Who coming back after 16 years, they're gonna want the Daleks back. So they threw everything at this. So yeah, the chroma key, the green screen stuff of Noel Clarke with Noel Clarke it's not bad.
It's not bad. Considering it's 2006.
Yes,
I think
2005 production, but yeah.
Well, yeah, whatever.
Ish.
Same time. Considering it's mid-noughties.
Yeah.
I would say, given that, in general, the way the whole episode looks with, obviously, the cameras at the time and the kind of mid-noughties, like, not being in HD and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd say that the
screen... We're watching the Blu-rays.
Yeah.
Of this. That's everything we're watching at the moment is the Blu-rays. So it's all been like remastered, upscale, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So we're seeing it as almost feels like as raw as it can be. It's not being hidden behind a crappy TV. Like we're seeing it all.
Yeah, but like considering the what's the word I'm looking for? The limitations of the technology at the time, I would say that the green screen is believable. Like it's not like I look at it and go, oh my god, you can blatantly tell that they're green screen, because even in the scene where they're running down the street, you can sort of see that they obviously filmed it.
That's just a seam down the middle, and they just film two sides of it. It's more when they're in the mansion or the big house
stood between them.
No. When they're in the mansion and they've like stripped Mickey down and tied him to a chair. And you've got the fire crackling in the background, and they get the light correct. Because even if obviously they'd have filmed it on the same spot. Just with Noel Clarke having a double in place so he knew who to to react to.
Also a good
They get
point
it, they do it pretty well.
Most of the scenes with Mickey and Ricky are stock still. If you sort of think to look at that, because they would have had the camera on a point so that everything they filmed was in exactly the same spot, so they could see it together. They had a very
clean plate to use if they needed to.
You don't really think about it, but most of the scenes where they're like next to each other are like stock still, whereas a lot of the footage, which we talked about in this episode, is quite well done with the handheld nature of it.
Yeah, because obviously we in this story, the audience alongside these what's the word I'm thinking
voyeuristic.
No, the people, they're running from the law. What are they called?
Outlaws?
No. Fugitives. That's the word. It just left me.
I have no idea.
We see that, as you say, that handheld shakiness, this sort of unstable nature of what they're doing. They have to always be on their feet and always on the move. Whereas when we're seeing the stuff with, like, Pete, the president of Great Britain, and John Lumick and anything with Cybers, it's a lot more solid, it's a lot more regimented in its camera work. And just to follow on from that, it's something that I'd never spotted before, but something that we pointed out when we were watching it just now. When we reached the point when the Doctor discovers that Cybers is owning most of the businesses in the UK, and Pete Tyler's business is owned by John Lumick and blah, 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 blah. Let's go infiltrate your mum's 39th, inverted commas, birthday party. That whole sequence of the Doctor and Rose in the party, it's shot so differently to everything else in that episode. And if you didn't notice this... Just that first bit, though,
isn't it?
First bit and after... Jackie does her little speech, it comes back to them. If you didn't notice this before, go back and watch it, but it's shot very differently. It's lots of long takes, it's purely handheld camera work, and it is very, very voyeuristic. It's almost like if you'd have seen the sound guy in the background like shuffle out the way because the camera had to turn around because somebody walked away, or you see the boom arm come into shot, because it's literally like they've just gone into a party and just stuck a camera crew in the middle of it. All the poncy people are ignoring it because they're lower class and they work in film. I mean, who does that? Coming from someone who has a media degree, I'm not just like slagging off people who work in the film industry. I respect you very much. But the whole thing feels like you genuinely are in the middle of a real party, and there's just this crew focusing on what the Doctor and Rose are doing. It's so
it kind of is a little bit like you are somebody else at a party who just happens
it's like a
to be
documentary.
stood near them. Yeah, like you are like a fly on the wall, like you said, kind of just like following them around. But it does make a difference because they use it again later on when Jake pops over the wall, and it's a very, very small snippet, and you might like miss blink and you miss it kind of thing.
A bit of POV
when
work.
Him and Mickey are like going up to the what do they call them? Blimps? Is it a blimp?
Blimps. Zeppelin.
Zeppelin, that's the one. When they go up to the Zeppelin on like top of the roof, there's a very, very small shot where like Jake pops his head over the top of the wall and it switches to a POV almost as if you're looking through his eyes, where he sees the guards, quote unquote, because they're not very good guards, are they? He sees the guards and then it pops back down beneath the ladder, and it's a very, very quick like change of perspective, but it works really well because of the fact that you've had that like voyeuristic approach.
You've got this
beginning.
Intimacy with these guys.
Yeah.
With what do they call themselves again?
The
preachers or something.
Yeah, preachers, I think it is. Yeah,
something along those lines. Like, yeah, there is this very intimate approach, so that kind of camera work works really well, and you do get that disconnect between the upper class and the lower class based on the camera work.
Yeah,
and the lighting.
And also you get that
palette.
kind of the staticness with the camera work on John Lumick versus like the kind of handheld with the Doctor and Rose. Which,
apart from that slightly weird GoPro shot, I say GoPro, there's a point when John Lumick is trundling about on his wheelchair and they just mounted a camera to where his like armrest is, and it kind of follows him along, and it's a bit strange. It's like,
but anyway, you do get that kind of like almost robotic feel with the camera work on John Lumick because it's always cropped. It's always cropped to a very, very tight. Whenever it shows his face, I don't know. Most of the time, it's cropped to literally just kind of be like shoulders.
It's very in your face Big Brother-esque, because obviously with the fact that these earpods, I keep saying AirPods.
I know, I kept saying AirPods
Doctor
as
Who
well.
Predicted the rise of the AirPod and the wireless earbuds.
Lol.
All of you sheeple wearing your AirPods, honestly. One day you're already get converted. The fact that he can just go and like nab things out of people's heads, like he is literally like the Big Brother in this story. Like the plot of this was very much inspired by Spare Parts, which is a Big Finish audio drama featuring Peter Davison, which is apparently one of the best Big Finish audio dramas. One of the ones I've not actually listened to, but I probably should. In the same way that Dalek was inspired by Jubilee, which I have listened to.
Yes, yeah.
That was taken into consideration with this. So there's not actually any direct 1984 influence, but even just having John Lumick on the screen, to Mr. Crane, to the President, or to Pete Tyler, like there is always that very overbearing visual of John Lumick, and that robotic nature, as you say, is a good little foreshadow to what's going to happen to him. So as we've gotten to the party and everything's come together, because obviously the preachers rock up with all their AK-47s they're taking completely to bits in the back of the van, because why not? It looks cool. Let's do that. Make lots of gun noises.
Nobody would know that. Nobody knows that except you, because you play a lot of games.
Games are fun. Everything comes together. The Cybermen attack. You were a bit stumped as to why they were going there. Yeah,
so I said, didn't it? Because right at the sort of, I'd say the beginning of the episode, but it's probably not. It's probably like halfway.
It's during the first act.
You don't really realise how little actually happens in this episode. During the part where
you say
Pete
how
Tyler,
little yet we've talked for the length of the episode about part one.
I know. Pete Tyler is obviously getting ready to go meet the president on the orders of John Lumick, and Lumick steals security information from Jackie via her earpods.
Yeah.
And, excuse me, it's never quite explained at that point why he does that, because he literally is just like, oh, download security information. So you obviously know he's going to attack the premises. But why? Like, because it's only really explained to you at the meeting section. No, I was talking about the meeting that he has with the president. It's only really touched upon there when the president goes, oh, Mr. Tyler, I think I will come to your party because I need a drink. It's like, was he meant to be at the party already?
Yeah.
Was there a predetermined thing where he was like, oh, the president's going to be at the party, I need the security information. Like, that doesn't get explained, so it just seems like he's pulling this random info for no reason.
I theorised that, obviously, with being Pete Tyler, he's got friends in high places, including the president and John Lumick and blah blah. Because John Lumick was invited to, but he's like, I'm too busy, I've got work to do. And the president just name drops it to be like, I'm going for a drink, because this is he's just hammering home. He's like, he's disgusted. He wants to go and drink to forget this meeting and this proposal that John Lumick has. So I was like, oh, he's just going to go and kill the president because he's not on board with him, and obviously John Lumick is set that this is going to be a thing, hence why he just goes ahead with it anyway. But it's mentioned by Pete, I think.
Is it Pete?
I think it is Pete in Age of Steel, that he's there because he literally goes to kill the president. Because I suggested it because I think he knew he was going to say no, because obviously he gets the data from Jackie before this meeting. He knows he was going to say no. So he does it to take down the president and obviously because it's all friends in high places, they'll all be at this party, is an easy way to just get rid of them all and take over the government. So then, you know, the UK becomes under martial law, as the newscaster says during the Age of Steel, and John Lumick has control of the UK. So it's left a little bit grey to begin with. I mean, it's kind of obvious the fact that the president disagrees with John Lumick. It's like, he's gonna die, it's gonna happen.
No, I do just kind of wish that there was maybe just even like a very, very throwaway comment earlier on, like when Lumick calls Pete about the meeting, and he's like, oh, if the president can be at this meeting, then so can you. Pete could have literally just turned around and gone, oh, but the president's coming to the party. Something like that, do you know what I mean? Just to slip that little bit of info in there as to why, like, John Lumick then stole the security information from Jackie. Like, it just felt a little bit disjointed.
I would just assume that, you know, you think of somebody's group of friends that you know, you would kind of know who would be going to a party and who wouldn't be. Yeah, that confirmation that the president was definitely going to be there would have been useful, but
just a little bit.
Anyway, it's a tiny little thing. And as said, the president disagrees. We knew he was going to die. And as we jump forward to Age of Steel, the Doctor and co try to surrender and doesn't work and blah, blah, blah. We get to part 2. Speaking of people who are going to die, people get captured. Jackie goes to Battersea Power Station, which is where John Lumick's doing all of his stuff, and everyone splits up. Mickey and Jake go to take out the emotional inhibitors. Rose and Pete put fake earpods on and go in through the front door and try and get out through there. And then the Doctor and Mrs. Moore go into the cooling tunnels, whatever, to get into Battersea Underground. And as they drop down the ladder and into the cooling tunnel, Amy mentioned about the fact that you care for her. This soon, you don't see masses of her, but you care about Mrs. Moore at this point in time.
A lot. Like, it's not obviously to the point of like, oh my god, I care so much. I'm
going to bawl my eyes out if she inevitably dies, which she will.
It is a kind of like, it's a character that I actually give a crap about, unlike Benny, and I will always forever mention Benny as being the
that Orphan 55 episode of this is going to be gold.
Oh god, when we eventually get there, lol. But yeah, you actually, despite the fact that you've not seen much of her, you don't really know much of her story until you get into the cooling tunnels. Like you said to me, she's got that very motherly...
gives you this life story.
Yeah, she's got that very motherly feel, hasn't she?
You've got Ricky, who is this very angry person. Also, you know, got to give Noel Clarke credit for having to act against himself. It's never something easy to do.
Having to scowl constantly.
So you've got very scowly Mickey and very scowly Ricky, scared Mickey. Which he does do very well in this. You've got Jake, who we will very briefly touch upon in a moment, played by Andrew Hayden Smith, who is this also very, very, very Geordie, very sort of vibrant, very energetic kind of character, very angry, similar to Ricky as well. And then, you've got Mrs. Moore, this very motherly figure, who, as soon as she starts giving her sort of life story off to the Doctor, I don't know how much she really had faith in the mission they were doing. The fact that she was opening up to this complete stranger, she has no idea whether he would actually be part of, like, whether he's genuinely on their side. I mean, you kind of assume so, but imagine if it was a plant by Cybers. Like, they seem very paranoid about a lot of things. Like, why wasn't she suspectful of the Doctor in the first place? Like, maybe the fact that she was opening up so much to him meant that I think she knew that she probably wasn't going to walk away from this, which is kind of sad. Yeah, unfortunately, she does get killed down in the tunnels. But while they're down in the tunnels, they come across a Cyberman, she bombs it, and the Doctor it wakes up again, and the Doctor realises the emotional inhibitor has gone kaput. So the original human, Sally, behind it, begins to speak. And similar to Jackie, who we find in Battersea when Pete and Rose get in there, who she's already been converted because she... Imagine the programming of a Cyberman to go, this brain recognizes that person. I'm going to go over to that person and tell them I am your dead wife.
Yeah, literally.
Ouch.
Oof.
But it was a second of thinking, hang on a second. Both of the Cybermen, and also one later on in the series, that get acknowledge their previous selves, they're all women.
Yeah.
Because the Cybermen are very masculine.
I mean, they're literally called Cybermen.
Not only in their name, but also the way that they're built. They are a very masculine shaped thing. So
they ain't got them titties.
They don't have cyber titties. Save that for Torchwood. Oh, God.
No.
Chris Chibnall, thank you very much.
Giving us cyber tits.
For God's sake. I know what I'm doing after the podcast.
No.
You've taken me off track now, Amy, for God's sake.
I'm sorry, you were saying about their masculinity.
They propose this fantastic juxtaposition to really make you uncomfortable at the idea. Because the hypothetical of having your brain taken out and put into a machine and blah, it's like, yeah, whatever. But then the idea of having that huge juxtaposition of female characters, obviously Sally we don't know what she looked like, but obviously Jackie we do, and then seeing this Cyberman on the other side and it technically being the same person, it really puts it across to the viewer just how strange and how horrifying that whole process is.
Yeah.
They do sort of play up on that kind of thing a bit more, especially with Danny Pink in season 11. No, not
10?
11. 8.
Oh.
8.
I was miles off.
Yeah. But this was the first time they really do it in New Who, and it's quite eerie.
Yeah, the bit where Sally sort of starts to say, like, I'm cold, is kind of like, oh my God.
Where's whatever her husband's name
Gareth.
Called. Gareth, yeah.
Yeah, and then she's like, you're getting married, and it's like, no. Like,
it pushes
again,
that harsh reality. Like I said,
episode...
you picture a young woman, and then this big metal dude full of goop and processors, as most people are now they've been vaccinated. Ha! Topical humour. Processors, because we're getting tracked. I had to explain that to you, Amy. I'm disappointed. But yeah,
what?
I love... Shut
what?
up.
No. Discord completely cut out on me, so you just
really?
went blank, and then I came back into all you said was, now most people are vaccinated. I was like, wait, what? What did I miss?
Okay. Never mind. I thought you just... I basically made a joke about how they're full of goop and microchips, like how people have been vaccinated.
Oh, I see.
Anyway, moving on. Yeah, it's a really great way of putting across that these were people, and they give you this big juxtaposition to go along with that. So we lose Mrs. Moore, which is very sad, but she's just all left down there. Nah, whatever.
Angela Price, get it right.
Angela Price, sorry.
Don't say she's just left down there, meh. The whole point of him knowing her real name was to carry on her legacy, god damn it.
Anyway. But then, so we talked about the Doctor and Mrs. Moore, we talked about Pete and Rose's where they go. Mickey and Jake go up into the blimp and do the fake typing and battle an empty Cyberman shell. Fake typing is the worst. But Andrew Hayden Smith, obviously back in 2006, a lot of us back then knew exactly who he was because he did lots of presenting on CBBC.
He did.
Alongside Jake Humphrey, who I initially said, it's Jake Humphrey. But it's not Jake Humphrey. Jake Humphrey went on to do BT Sport and F1, or F1 then BT Sport. But yeah, Andrew Hayden Smith, most of us will know from doing CBBC.
Why do I feel like he
did Biker Grove as well. He did a bunch of acting.
I do remember him from Biker Grove vaguely. Yeah. Why do I feel like... Who was the guy that did...
He's from Gateshead as well, which is brilliant. Yeah. Which is literally where we've just moved from.
Oh God, what was his name? The blue bear thing. Was it Nev? No,
you're
Nev
thinking
was the guy.
you're thinking of Nev. Yeah, is it?
Was Nev
I think
the
it is
guy?
Nev. No, you're thinking of Barney Harwood, who did Bear Behaving Badly.
Oh yeah. That's who I'm thinking.
He was called Nev, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think it was Nev.
It was Nev the Bear.
Do you remember CBBC had like games on their website where you could play as like Nev the Bear, and it was like a continuous running game where you had to collect coins or something?
I found somewhere, I have to dig it out again, I lived obviously for me, I lived on the Doctor Who website back in the day, and I had
Ops.
a load of Flash games, and they had one called I think it's called like the Last Dalek, and it's like an isometric game where you were literally playing the Dalek and trying to get out of Van Statten's prison.
That's cool.
And and obviously the game doesn't exist on the BBC website anymore. The Doctor Who website is all just like factual now.
Yeah.
It's so sad. Like they don't really do good merch anymore. All the merch is kind of matured, which there's some part of me that does appreciate that, and there's a part of me that's just like, bring back remote controlled Daleks for God's sake.
Yeah.
And their website's just like, here's images from the episodes, and that's about it. I'm like, where are the Flash games? But somebody has posted that Flash game on the internet, and I'm pretty certain you can play. I think they might have converted it to HTML5, or you could download it and play it, or something like that.
Wonderful.
I might stream it one day. That'd be really fun. Let us know on Twitter at Kasterpod if you played any of those Doctor Who Flash games, because there were quite a few good ones. But the Last Dalek, I think it was the Last Dalek, was just
Well, it wouldn't be the one
best.
that you played all the time, wouldn't it?
But anyway, yeah. You were thinking of going backwards a few steps. You were thinking of Barney Harwood in Bear Behaving Badly and Smile.
Oh,
Sunday.
yeah, Smile.
Is that Sunday mornings?
I think so.
I think it was Sunday mornings, because I think that was where it kind of came from. Then yeah, he had the TV show as well. Mm-hmm. But no,
he was on CBBC though. Is the point? Is that
Andrew Hayden Smith did do
wasn't.
CBBC?
Yeah.
He did Biker Grove. He did lots of CBBC stuff. I'm trying to think what else. I'm just looking at what else he did. He did. Oh, he was on Blue Peter at one point, not as an actual, not as a presenter though.
Oh.
He's not really done like massive amounts of stuff really, but like he was in Hollyoaks as well.
Oh,
but yeah,
fair enough.
most of us will know him who are our age and
From
British from CBBC. And I remember just seeing him like, oh my god, it's the guy from CBBC. That's quite cool.
That's dope.
That's cool. So yeah, the Roger Lloyd Pack gets taken out by the football manager because he realizes like, this is messed up. I don't want to be a part of this, and he does get killed in the end anyway. It's like, nice try, mate, but you did kickstart him becoming the cyber controller, which was kind of going to be a given, because at the end of the day, the whole cyber industries thing came about because, the Cybermen came about because he was dying. He becomes the cyber controller.
We had a bit of a discussion about that, didn't we? Because we sort of were saying like, it's funny how as soon as he is like, no, I'm not ready, other Cybermen are like, you will be upgraded. And he's like, no, with my last dying breath. It's like, oh, funny how you don't want to be forced into being an upgraded, isn't
hypocrite.
it? Like,
I think he wanted to do it on his own terms.
But
I think.
that's not the point. It's kind of like, oh, so you're forcing everybody else to be upgraded before they.
But as soon as you have to, you're like, oh, I don't like it.
I'm not so sure about this. And yeah, but
that fantastic sequence of, I mean, obviously it's that very convenient that Pete and Rose get captured as like, you helped Cyber Industries, Pete Tyler, so therefore you and whoever you're with is going to go into cyber control instead of just getting converted like everyone else.
No, wasn't it? Was that why they captured him?
Yeah.
Or was
it was like,
right.
you assisted in all of this, therefore you're not going to get upgraded just yet, or something. The Doctor's like, your binary vascular system, and obviously Mickey and Jake don't get caught. Mm-hmm. And they have the whole feud. There's the Doctor doing the way he says people during that whole big spiel he does.
It's
I love
like that picture.
It's
oh my
so
god!
big and stupid.
Do you remember that meme of like Draco Malfoy saying the P and Potter, and it's just that black dude with his lips really, really pursed up? That's how the Doctor says people.
David Tennant saying the word people in season 2. As you can probably hear, that was Amy doing the face. Walking meme. And then just, they get chased out of Battersea. They get rescued in the blimp on a big rope ladder, which you never really appreciate just how hard they are to climb until you actually do it. And
have you ever climbed a rope ladder that's not attached at the bottom?
It's
Go
the worst.
try it. Because I swear to God, Rose would not have got up that ladder as fast as she did.
I mean, it was double roped with lots of duct tape, but it was still no match for the sonic screwdriver, and Pete going, "This is for Jackie Tyler!" as the cyber controller pulls up. And just going back to the CGI, that shot of the cyber controller after the ladder breaks, it falls backwards into the inferno of Battersea. That is actually one of the best shots in season 2 in terms of its CGI, I think. Mm-hmm. It's very, very solid. I
said that I think they could have made him fall just a little bit further down before he explodes, because it does look like he kind of just falls about halfway and then goes boop, into the
It
explosion.
just sort of fades away.
Yeah, which
I mean,
was a little bit jarring, but in terms of the actual explosion CGI, yes, that is.
and even
like...
his like 3D model, if it was I think it was a 3D model, or whether they might have just shot a plate of the actor on a green screen like falling, and they just scaled it down or whatever. But like all that looked really good. But we're saying all this CGI is really good. There's one point when they come up over a hill, and there's another one of those POV shots, as you say, Amy, and it sort of creeps up, and you can see the blimp sort of parked on top of Battersea. There's a point when it zooms in on the
when
red
the
lights
doctor's
rotating.
like, oh, where's that signal coming from?
That's where the signal's coming from. And they literally just took this, I don't know, maybe 480i sized image and just punched in on it, and
just
it looks
zoomed in.
so bad.
It's so bad, wasn't it?
Like I said,
maybe it was
we're
because
watching
we
the
were watching
Blu-rays.
it on the Blu-ray.
Watching the Blu-rays, watching it on a good TV, so there's no like fuzziness of the actual display it can hide behind, and it looks so
It does.
bad.
It looks awful. You know when you zoom too far in on your phone and everything starts to
But
go
obviously,
like
it's
pixelated.
had like sort of upscaling compensations. It all looks a bit blotchy and blurry.
Yeah,
I'd never spotted it
great.
before.
Wasn't
and then
great.
as soon as it punched in, I was like, "Oh, good grief!"
We both kind of sat there and went, "Jesus, that shot was awful."
But there's honestly, in terms of its like CGI, the camera work, like I said, like going between the underbelly with the fugitives and then going to the upper class, and how the camera work changes. I love this podcast because there's so much more we realize and so much more we appreciate about Doctor Who and the effort that goes into it, really.
Yeah,
Even
I do
if you
like.
can criticize the enemies, criticize the CGI, criticize the makeup or the storylines, but in terms of they really do think about how they want to make this.
Yeah.
Because this is arguably BBC's flagship series.
I mean, it comes down to, we've talked a lot about suspension of disbelief today, just the two of us, like, you know, randomly.
Yes.
But it does come down to that kind of fact of like, you know, if you can believe that David Tennant is a like walking, talking alien with two hearts, you can discount a little bit of bad camera work and a bad not camera work, but bad cropping and a bad CGI. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it was 2006 for crying out loud. Like,
It's pretty good for 2006 TV. As said, there's stuff you get in modern TV that is far, far worse. But they really did pull out all the stops for this. So, what would you say marks out of 10, Amy, for this two-parter?
I would say I quite like it. I don't know what accent that was. I don't know what.
I quite like it. I do.
Oh God, it's hard to rate it though, isn't it? Because I mean, I would give it a solid 8.5.
I would say 7.
Would you?
Yeah, I think it's all very good. It's all very solid. It's it's a really great reintroduction for the Cybermen, as we've talked about. The way that they reintroduce them, but they don't dump all the lore on you. It works really, really well to introduce a new audience and just put a new spin on things. Like Chris, if you're listening, which I know you're not, you don't have to reinvent you don't have to reinvent something entirely or change up everything to put a new spin on something.
What as Nerd Cubed calls him, first draft chibnall.
That's so right, honestly. I do like it, but it's not one of those episodes that I would keep going back to.
No, I wouldn't.
Obviously,
I wouldn't purposely
far,
choose to go and rewatch it.
No. So far in New Who, as we've already said, Dalek is the most comparable because it is a reintroduction of a classic enemy, a very, very, very iconic classic enemy. But there's so much more about Dalek that you can keep going back to versus this. But that's by no means makes it a bad episode by any stretch.
No.
I think it is good, and that's great, but that's about it.
Okay, so here's a question for you then. One of my own creation. Other than Dalek, because obviously that would be your immediate answer, what episode out of all the ones we've watched so far would you say has the most rewatch value?
Ooh,
is that a toughie? Is that a tough question?
That is a toughie. That's a question for me and a question for all of you. We're going to get to some questions that you guys have sent in on Twitter, but that's a question for you guys.
Yeah, if you want to tweet
out of the series and nearly a half that we've done so far, what is the most rewatchable story? I would honestly say, if I can't say Dalek, probably Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. as a complete story.
Oh, I didn't think you were going to say that.
What do you think?
I thought you were going to say Empty Child, Dr. Dances.
I was thinking that.
Because I think rewatch value in terms of its story and its intensity, and because Bad Wolf Part of the Ways, it's fine. It's the season climax. Like, yeah, we all kind of, it's great. Like, but I personally would say maybe Empty Child, Dr. Dances in terms of rewatch value, just out of this like stretch that we've seen so far. Because there's so many other Doctor Who episodes like in later series that I personally would choose to rewatch more. But just out of what we've seen so far, I think the one with the most rewatch value is probably Empty Child, Dr. Dances. Because it's not got that, like, Bad Wolf, once you know Bad Wolf is Rose, is this, that kind of is it, really, isn't it, for that
takes
episode?
It away a bit, yeah.
Yeah, like,
I mean, you say that, but you could say the same about the Empty Child, about knowing who it is and Nancy's reveal and blah.
But the thing with Bad Wolf is that I feel like it doesn't have quite the emotional...
The stakes were higher when you watched it the first time.
Yeah.
Versus going back to watching it the second time.
Whereas the Empty Child, Dr. Dances is still an intense story because of the way they shot it and because of the direction and like because of the sort of unbeknownst threat in the episode, like as it plays out. Like, whereas Bad Wolf, you know what the threat is, they're Daleks, but in The Empty Child, you don't quite know what the threat is, and I think that slightly makes it slightly more rewatchable for me. Just to pips it.
That's fair enough. So that's a question for you guys as well. Tweet us at Kasterpod. What do you think is the most rewatchable episode of the series that we've got to so far?
Up to season 2, episode 5-6.
Yeah, speaking of at Kasterpod, we've had a few questions. And there's one thing we haven't touched upon yet, a very, very big thing at the end of the episode, because Misha has tweeted us, asking, how do you feel about the treatments of Mickey and his decisions at the end of these episodes? Do you think Russell T Davies was already thinking about his use later in the series? And I can definitely say that yes, he was.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of tell.
There is the, Russell will establish this series arc as to what's going to happen, and I'm sure he probably penciled in this idea. So whether, I would say maybe Mickey went off and maybe he wrote to say Mickey would disappear off at some point and then come back at the end, whether that was just off on his own or on a parallel world, or whether that would be what Tom McRae used to create this new version of the Cybermen and make it be here that Mickey went off and did his own thing. But it's definitely known, even as we've said through the whole episode, Mickey has his eyes set on, could this be where I am instead? Because I'm genuinely as far away from the Doctor and Rose as I can possibly be.
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, yeah, like you said, we've touched up on it a lot about his motives and about his actions and stuff. And I do think it was kind of justified. I think the treatment of him, if you're talking kind of specifically from like the Doctor and Rose's standpoint, I actually think it's quite selfish of them to sort of just be like, oh, Mickey, you're still here, I guess. Like, because you just, even if you have that dynamic with, I mean, personally, from my perspective, because I don't feel like I'm an asshole, but if like you were in a group with like 3 people, one person you didn't know so well, one person you were really close friends with, and the other person was friends with the friend you were friends with, you would not exclude that person in the same way that the Doctor and Rose do. Like, you would try and include them a bit more, you would try and be a bit more kind of like lenient towards the fact that they might not know what you're talking about and stuff. So I feel like the treatment of him is very, like, I feel like at the end of the episode, or even kind of throughout the episode, the Doctor has that realization of like, yeah, actually maybe I've not treated you quite as well as I should have done. Obviously that comes from Rose telling the Doctor the story of Mickey's gran, and like the fact that they sit in the TARDIS and have that chat with each other on their own. And it kind of comes down to the fact that like, yeah, Mickey's made his decision really early on. He's like, oh, if I don't find anything better. And then when the Doctor's like, oh, Mickey, if we all make it out of this alive, I'll meet you back at the TARDIS. And Mickey's like, yeah, that's a promise.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
Like,
okay.
Yeah, okay. And you can just see it. So I think it was very clear from almost the get-go of Rise of the Cybermen that he wasn't he was already kind of like, oh, this is London. My grand's still
He's
alive.
had one adventure with them, and that dynamic still wasn't great with him in Gun in the Fireplace. So yeah, he kind of made his decision. So it was definitely known, and I think the way that they treated him was very good. It made Mickey much more independent, made him a stronger character, because he had Ricky to live up to, even though he does very much make it clear at the end that I am not Ricky. I am somebody else. But he still has that confidence in him, because we've seen him save the world in Aliens in London World War III, and we see him do it again here.
I just love how he said, back up, I'm good with computers.
Yeah, I saved the universe with the big yellow trucks, so, definitely.
I do enjoy that whole sequence.
Yeah. Callum has asked us about what we think about the Cybermen compared to the old ones in the classic series, and honestly, Callum, I haven't watched that much Cybermen-related stuff in the classic series. Honestly, I think the most I've seen of the Cybermen in the classic series is, the 5 Doctors.
I've seen a clip here and there.
It's one of those things that I haven't gone back to watch all the Cybermen stuff. I've watched all of the Dalek stuff, but not so much the Cybermen. I did have a subscription to BritBox, but I don't have it currently because it's just another payment to go out.
Yeah, and the only thing you were using it for was Classic was Doctor Who. It's kind of it's not really worth it.
I do really need to, but I also have everything else I'm doing.
Yeah, it's
I don't get as much time to sit and watch stuff and actually take it in. A lot of the stuff that I have on at the moment that I put on
it's
TV
just background noise.
is background noise. It's literally Disney Plus, and then it's Family Guy or The Simpsons or Futurama as it is right now. It's just background noise. So as much as I would really like to go back and watch it all properly, I don't really have the
time. I mean, we're adults, we work, we live, we
work,
do stuff.
I stream, we do this, because we're back to doing this. We're going to really push to do it weekly, and I think we're feeling good about it.
I mean, we're going to try. I start a baking course on Monday next week in the evenings, so we don't really have time.
We've got a lot of stuff going on, but I would definitely like to.
But I mean, I think compared to the old Cybermen, it's a very different kettle of fish, because obviously technology has come so far since the original Cybermen were on screen in the real world, that you almost can't really compare them, because back then they were just men kind of wrapped in silver fabric.
Honestly though, the original 10th Planet Cybermen, not only in how they're represented in World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls in series 10, they are creepy.
Oh yeah,
they are so creepy. But yeah, someone we'll have to get to at some point. And finally, Tony asks quite simply, Mickey or Ricky?
Oh, well,
I don't think that's a hard question.
Mickey, obviously, because you don't really know Ricky, and also he's a bit of a dick.
There's that little, you get that little essence of Mickey when he reveals that he's the most wanted in London for parking tickets instead of just being a general badass. But yeah, there is that scowly nature that we have. Ricky isn't that sort of he's almost the comic relief, but he's not there as comic relief in the same way that kind of I'd say Donna is in series 4. But
Mickey.
There's not really much else to say, I guess.
I mean, he's much more likable. He's generally just an all-round better character, for sure. Absolutely. But if you have a different opinion, I'd like to hear why you would pick Ricky.
Absolutely. Any of these questions that we read out, and apologies if there are questions that get sent in maybe later on or we haven't had the chance to cover them, apologies. But, tweet us at Kasterpod with either responses to the questions we've answered today or the questions we have pitched to you about the most rewatchable episode of Doctor Who so far. But you can also tweet us at Kasterpod about the next episode, which is The Idiot's Lantern.
Ooh.
This is where Mark Gatiss comes back. And on it, right, I know that we're going to cover this a bit more next week, but this episode gets way more stick than I think it deserves, but we'll cover that. I do quite like The Idiot's Lantern, but that's for next week.
Yeah, I quite like it too. I'm excited.
Same. So yeah, you can tweet us at Kasterpod. I was about to say using the hashtag Kasterpod. Just tweet us at Kasterpod with your questions. It makes it so much easier for us to see them. It saves me having to have Twitter open and the YouTube comments open and everything. But that is about where we're going to wrap up this week's episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to it, and thank you for spending a good hour odd listening to us chat rubbish. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for all of the great response we've had from our return last week.
Yeah, it's been really nice.
It's been really, really cool.
So many people tweeting us like, where can we watch it? So listen to it.
All these figures. I actually can see all the statistics now on Anchor about how we're doing and stuff. We really, really appreciate it. And if you are listening on a platform that you wouldn't normally use, so you can get this, it should be getting distributed to everywhere soon. It's a bit of a slower process for certain platforms. Cough, cough, Apple. It should, based on how Anchor works, it should end up on Apple Podcasts. At the moment, it's not, but it will be. It's on like Google, and obviously it's on Spotify and all sorts of stuff in all sorts of places at the moment. But it will be everywhere.
Yeah.
Eventually, stay tuned to the Twitter @Kasterpod. Follow us, tweet us, whatever.
And I think you can use Spotify for free, can't you? You don't have to have an account with them. Is that right? Because you just get adverts in between the stuff you listen to, don't you, if you don't have a Spotify account?
I think you still need an account.
But you don't have to actually pay for it. Yeah.
No.
So even if you, if
but
you're
you
struggling...
do have things like Google Podcasts. I know that this is out on Google Podcasts, absolutely, which is probably what I would use personally, but I use Spotify a lot.
Yeah,
but
I use
premium,
Spotify,
so,
yeah.
But thank you all very much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed our ramblings. I hope you enjoyed finally getting back to the actual rewatch. So we'll be back next week with The Idiot's Lantern. But until we see you again, Amy, where can they follow you and see all the stuff you do?
They can follow me at either Ames_Elizabeth on Instagram and Twitter. I don't really tweet that much, so I highly just recommend follow me on Instagram. Or you can find me at Amy Cakes Baking on Instagram as well, because I have a cake business and y'all should go follow it, because if you're in the UK, you could potentially get cake from me.
There's some good cake, let me tell you. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and various other places at PickupChangeToe, or on Twitch at Rich's Live. I'm sure that one day we might be able to get a banter Last Dalek flash game streaming, which would just be silly and just honestly quite fun, because why the hell not?
Why not?
Or as said, at Kasterpod, best place to find us. But until we see you next week, have a fantastic weekend, have a great week. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That was a really posh way to say goodbye.
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 Goodbye.